Hello everyone, today we enter day 36 of our Bible reading. We're going to read chapters 16, 17, and 18 of Leviticus. At the beginning of chapter 16, we previously discussed how Aaron's eldest and second sons offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, failing to sacrifice as he commanded. If you don't do as the Lord has commanded, no matter how pious you may appear to be, it's all useless, as what the Lord values is obedience. So, after the two sons were burned to death for offering unauthorized fire before the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell your brother Aaron that he is not to come whenever he chooses into the most high place behind the curtain in front of the atonement cover on the ark." What is behind the curtain? It's the most holy place. He cannot enter the most holy place at will to come before the atonement cover on the ark of the covenant, or he will die. "For I will appear in the cloud over the atonement cover," so even Aaron as the high priest cannot come before God whenever he wants. He can only enter the most holy place once a year. So chapter 16 explains how to perform this sacrifice. It's in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, the Day of Atonement on the 10th day of the 7th month. So on this Day of Atonement, first Aaron, it says here, Aaron must bring a young bull as a sin offering and a ram as a burnt offering. Now this young bull is to make atonement for himself and his household. So the high priest, on the Day of Atonement, before he makes atonement for the whole community of Israel, must first make atonement for himself and his household, not just for himself, but for his entire priestly family, to atone for sin. Then he is to take a censer full of burning coals from the altar before the Lord. At this time, he takes the censer and fills it with burning coals from the altar before the Lord. Do you see? This is completely different from his sons offering unauthorized fire. So previously, the problem with his sons was that they lit the fire themselves. The burning coals must be taken from the altar. Because who lit the fire on this altar? It was the Lord himself who sent it forth. Then he must take a handful of incense behind the curtain, which means into the most holy place. Only then can he enter the most holy place. Then, while in the most holy place, he is to put the incense on the fire before the Lord, so that the smoke of the incense will conceal the atonement cover on the Ark of the Covenant, so that he will not die. So he needs to conceal it. To conceal it means that because God is right there on the atonement cover is where one comes into his presence. So this incense and the smoke both represent prayer. They represent sacrifice and atonement. Then, of course, he must take some of the bull's blood and sprinkle it 7 times on the east side and in front of the atonement cover to represent asking the Lord to accept it, asking God to accept the sin offering he has made with this bull. All right, next are the male goats. 2 male goats are to be taken. These 2 goats are for the people, for the entire community of Israel, as a sin offering. Similarly, the goat's blood must be brought inside the curtain into the most holy place and sprinkled on and in front of the atonement cover, just like the bull's blood. However, there is something very special here. When presenting the sin offering for the entire community of Israel, 2 male goats are taken, then lots are cast. 1 goat is for the Lord to be slaughtered as a sin offering. The other goat is for Azazel. It is to be released, sent away into the wilderness. Now, what does Azazel mean? There is much debate in biblical commentary because the Chinese Bible uses a transliteration, a phonetic rendering of the Hebrew word. The original Hebrew meaning of this word refers to a complete removal or a total departure. This complete removal signifies that Israel's sins are carried far away. That is the general idea. Later, in the New International Version, it was translated as scapegoat, meaning the sins are transferred onto it. So, while 1 bull and 1 goat are killed as a sin offering, the other goat carries the sins far away, removing them from the community of Israel. This is very unique and was not part of the sin offerings mentioned previously. This specific ritual is only performed on the 10th day of the 7th month, the Day of Atonement. So, we can basically understand it like this. 1 goat is offered as a sacrifice for the sins I have already committed. It is killed in my place. The other goat for Azazel signifies that my future sins will also be removed far from me, keeping me holy. That is the basic meaning. Now chapter 16 verse 29 specifically states that on the 10th day of the 7th month, you must deny yourselves and not do any work, whether native-born or a foreigner residing among you, because on this day, atonement will be made for you to cleanse you. This will be a lasting ordinance for you. You will be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It is a day of Sabbath rest, and you must deny yourselves. This day is the great day of atonement and a holy Sabbath for all Israel. On this day, they must acknowledge their sins and seek cleansing before the Lord. This is a lasting ordinance for the Israelites. Verse 34 says, this is to be a lasting ordinance for all Israel. Atonement is to be made once a year for all the sins of the Israelites. Therefore, the most important day for the priest of Israel is the 10th day of the 7th month, when he makes this sacrifice for himself and the entire nation. Only then can he enter the most holy place. His entry represents the entire community of Israel coming before God, which happens only once a year. This immediately brings to mind the redemption accomplished by Jesus Christ. Yes, so what came before is just a shadow, while what follows is the reality. So just as it says in Hebrews chapter 10 verses 12 and 13, but Christ offered for all time one sacrifice for sins. Christ appeared once, but this time it's an eternal sin offering. He sat down at the right hand of God, and since that time he waits for his enemies to be made his footstool. Verse 14 is very important, because by one sacrifice he has made perfect forever those who are being made holy, forever complete. Now, however, among the Israelites, every day they would actually, when they sinned, they would offer sin offerings and burnt offerings. But only once a year, the priest would represent all the Israelites and enter into the presence of God. Only this once a year, and next year they'd have to do it all over again. But Jesus Christ offered himself once and for all, becoming the eternal salvation for his own people. On one hand, we need to see the relationship of them, and on the other hand, we must see the differences between. So actually, the Old and New Testaments are a whole, both representing the gradual unfolding of God's will, but there are differences between them. Some use a vivid metaphor, comparing it to a seed. The Old Testament is a seed, but by the New Testament, it has grown into a sapling. Now, between a seed and a sapling, there are certainly outward differences, but inwardly they are connected. And this connection, God, here in the Old Testament, uses the whole of Israel, the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to represent his own children. Their sacrifices also represent the eternal sacrifice that Jesus Christ would later offer for his people. All right, moving to chapter 17, it speaks of any Israelite who slaughters an ox, a lamb, or a goat. If they do not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to the Lord, that slaughtering carries the guilt of bloodshed. It shall be reckoned to that person, and such a person must be cut off from their people. Verse 5 says, this is so the Israelites will bring to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord the sacrifices they've been making in the open fields and give them to the priest, to offer to the Lord as fellowship offerings. What does this mean? It's to prevent the Israelites from just randomly slaughtering cattle or sheep in the fields or anywhere else to offer sacrifices. Sacrifices must be at the entrance of the Lord's tent of meeting, brought before the Lord's tabernacle to be offered to him. Verse 7 says, they must no longer offer sacrifices to the goat idols to whom they prostitute themselves. Because if you don't offer sacrifices before the Lord's tabernacle, then those sacrifices you offer elsewhere, whether inside or outside the camp. Who exactly are you offering them to? Okay, then verse 10 starts emphasizing again, mainly that blood must not be eaten. Any Israelite or any foreigner residing among you who eats blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut them off from their people. Verse 11, what's the reason? Because the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. It is the blood that makes atonement by one's life. Therefore I say to the Israelites, none of you may eat blood. What does this actually mean? In fact, starting from the time of Noah, God said, do not eat blood, because life is in the blood. So here it begins to unfold. Previously, we might have thought, does it mean we can't kill animals? No, that's not it. I've already killed the animal and eaten its meat. So what does life is in the blood mean? Why can't we eat blood? Because blood has only one purpose, and it's not for us to eat. It's stated very clearly here. There is life in the blood, and it can make atonement for your lives on the altar. So this use of blood, the purpose of the blood of these animals is for atonement, not for you to eat. All right? Okay, well, in the New Testament, after Jesus Christ came, what did he say? You must drink my blood and eat my flesh. So why was his blood to be drunk, his flesh to be eaten? The Jews found this very strange. So in the New Testament, Jesus Christ would unfold the completion of the entire plan of redemption. It's not just about offering a lamb and using its blood for our atonement, but even more, we are to eat the flesh of this lamb and drink its blood to receive what? New life, because life is contained within the blood. We'll expand on this when we get to the New Testament. So from this one commandment alone, we see that what was said to Noah in his time, what's said here to the Israelites, and what would later come from the mouth of Jesus Christ, it's a step-by-step progression. God's entire will is like a gift wrapped all together. Then it unfolds slowly, bit by bit, so that you can see what is inside. Okay, and then chapter 18 talks about quite a few unlawful sexual acts. Now, you see it's listed in great detail. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. But why is this? Because God made it very clear. He said, I am the Lord your God. You used to live in Egypt. You must not do as they do in Egypt. So first, you cannot follow the practices of the Egyptians. Now, I am bringing you to Canaan. You must not follow the practices of the people there either. So you cannot bring those unlawful sexual acts of the Egyptians into the land of Canaan. And you must not follow the unlawful sexual acts that the people of Canaan are already practicing. We know the entire land of Canaan had become so corrupt that homosexuality was everywhere and so on. It was very, very, very immoral. And Egypt also had these immoral things. So God is saying here, what must you do? You must be holy. I am the Lord your God. So you must keep my laws and decrees. If a person obeys them, they will live by them. And in verse 24 of this chapter, it specifically mentions that you must not defile yourselves in any of these ways, because this is how the nations I am to drive out before you became defiled. So it's even clearer now that those Canaanites, the reason their sins were full to the brim was because they defiled themselves in these matters. Even the land was what? Defiled. Not only were the hearts of these people defiled, but even this piece of land was defiled. So I punished the land for its sin, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. So God's meaning is that if you defile yourselves in that place, then likewise the land will be defiled. Then I will also, what? Drive you out from my land. All right, so today we've talked about the Day of Atonement, which is the climax of all the preceding sacrificial regulations, the most important sacrifice, July 10th of every year. But this sacrifice was still incomplete. It's all a foreshadowing of the true salvation of Jesus Christ's entire sacrifice. Now, starting from chapter 18, as we divided it last time, it talks about how the people of Israel, come before God through sacrifice. So how do they live a holy life before God? Later, there will be many moral laws, many about how to observe festivals, various commandments, and then we will slowly unfold them. So God is very, very, how should I say, you will see from here that God is very, very righteous. He is holy, and his people must become holy and without blemish. And he will surely, through his grace, not only redeem us, but also make us truly become holy people before him, to be with him. Praise the Lord.